conversation with my Babunia, who's Elsie Konovalov. And my father, Paul Zolnekoff, will be asking questions, and we'll find out a little bit about her life.
Okay.
Я Параша Васильевна была Сусоева, потом Зольникова, потом Коновалова. Родилась в России. Приехала в Америку, мне было 9 годов. И мы жили на Юта-стрит, и пошли в школу. И там у нас была русская учительница, она нас учила по-русски, по-американски, и мы скоро выучились. И меня через 6 месяцев перевели в эту second grade. I was promoted to second grade, and in other 6 months I was in the 3rd grade. And when I was 12 years old, when I was 12 years old, and vacation time, school vacation time, somebody wants a girl to take care of the children, so they hired me, and I was taken for 3 children.
As a babysitter.
Yeah,
Mother, before we go any further, why don't you say in English where you was born, where you was born in
I was born in Russia, Salim, they call it. It's a village, Salim. When I was 3 years old, we moved to Karas. That's a city. And that's where my father had, they used to call it phaeton, carriage. That's what his job was. And
he made carriages?
And
did he make carriages?
Let me see. No, he didn't make carriages. He was a carriage. He owned his own carriage driver, and he used to meet the train and haul passengers from the train to their homes or wherever.
Okay.
Okay, Mother.
А теперь я забыла, что я говорила.
Well, that you lived in Karas.
All right.
You lived in Karas, and then from Karas.
Yeah, when I was 9 years old, so many people were coming to America, and no, I missed something important. I was only 2 years old, and I used to talk real good. And my mother, people start to talk, they're going to go to America. And they kept on saying America. And my mother couldn't believe it because America was so far away. How could we go there? And someone told her, ask child. And when the child says something, it will be done. And she asked me, are we going to America? And I told her yes. And then she says, when? And I told her, a bit. That's five it's holidays. A bit, they called it. 5 holidays.
Christian holidays, that they celebrated.
And when 5 holidays passed, people start to go to America. And then my father says, I'm going to go to America. He says, when? I don't know. How? I don't know. But we're going to be in America. He kept on saying that.
Mother, your father's name is what? Vasily
Сысоев.
And your mother?
Матрена Климанцевна была Чекунова. Потом, не будем вспоминать. И тогда second husband был father.
Yeah. And then when they decided to come to America, how old was your father and your mother? They were what, in their 40s or 50s?
They're in their 50s. And my mother was telling, he says, Oh, she says, I don't think they're going to let us in. I'm already old lady. I'm 50 years old. And they says, oh no, they let people that age go to America.
So, Mother, when you decided to come to America, who did you come with, and
Well, my next door, it's neighbors. He was at Vasily Zakharich Vizineyev. And I don't know what, he was carpenter. And he says, I'm going to America. And he says, soon too, because some relative was going to America. So he says, if you're going to America, I'm going to America too.
that's your grandfather, that's your
That's
father?
my father says, yeah.
And
So it wasn't long, excuse me, it wasn't too long ago when from Salim, our village, there was, I can't remember how many, but there were so many families, maybe around 8 or 10 families were going to America. And they all stopped at our house before next morning they take a train to go to Petersburg.
Petersburg.
And when they used to always come and stop at our house, we had a lot of feather beddings, and we all slept on the floor. And then, in the morning, we had big samovar. We put the towel around the samovar and put the eggs on the towel and then cover up with the samovar cover.
Yeah.
And when samovar is boiling, the water is boiling, we have tea, also cooked eggs. Right there.
Yeah, right. And that's
And that was a breakfast, always.
How big was, Mother, was this house that you lived in over there? Was it, how many rooms? 1 room, 2 rooms?
One big room and one kitchen.
And did you have a Ruski pechka, Russian stove in
And
there?
Russian stove, как они говорили,
What they
русская
bake bread in?
большая печка, хлеб пекли, а когда, если много борщ варить или чего, тогда, когда
And anyway, let me see you think what I thought. I'm going to ask you to say.
Козяки, you would know what's
Cosacks.
козяки. Made our manure,
Yeah,
brick.
That's those,
And they burn real long, and the stove gets real hot and stays hot real long, and it's hot, warm in the house, and also we could cook in it. Also we could bake in it.
and wintertime, when the weather was cold, this stove, the bricks were being heated up, it'd radiate the heat, and the children slept on top, over on top of these here, this big, what do we call them?
It's open space when you could get in on the top of it. But from a kitchen, it burns from the kitchen.
Did you have?
And it's got chimney going up from in the room, that way. And so me and my brother, we used to sleep we used to call na pechki.
On the stove.
Na pechki spali.
Yeah.
And sometimes, when they burn it for a long time, it's such hot, you just turn it from one side to another side because it's too hot for it.
Did you have, which kind of floors? Did you have wood floors or did you have dirt floors? Dirt floors or wood floors?
We had wooden floor.
You had wooden floors, yeah.
Some people had the dirt floor, but we had wooden floor.
And how many in your family? How many brothers and sisters did you have?
Well, I had 4 sisters and 1 brother, 2 brothers. One died when he was 7 years old. So there's Brother Jack and me, we grew up as close together, 2.5 years apart.
Yeah, all right, let me see. Mother's father and her mother were married twice. This was their second marriage, and they brought in how many children did grandfather bring in? Two? Tanya and
Tanya, Hanya, Yasha,
and then
four.
and Babunia brought in who?
Three.
3 children, and she brought in
Yeah, no,
Anna?
no, father had 3 and mother had 3, 6.
and
And
Babunia.
then 2 between us, so that's 8.
So you had let's name the children. The oldest one was who? Oldest one on your father's side. Who was the oldest one? Tanya or Totanya?
So Tanya,
Tanya was the oldest from grandfather's side, and the
Okay.
next one was
Tanya.
Tanya, who was married to John Popov, Daddy von Popov, and
what should be?
and Babunia, and then he had another son that died, and grandmother, she brought in mother's mother brought in Anna, and who else? Sirkin. Who's the Sirkin?
Serkin, Alexei,
Alexei, and who else?
sure.
How many children did Babunia have? 3. Who was the third one?
Alexei,
Onya,
Masha,
Marsha,
Onya.
and yeah. So when they traveled, when they left Kars, they traveled by boxcar to first. Where did you go? To Moscow,
No, it's
St. Petersburg.
yet.
Not, there's an
I
area.
can't remember now.
There's an area before you get to Moscow, and then from there, when they couldn't cross the border because they didn't have the passport. Only grandfather had the passport. So grandmother was saying that they had to slip some money to some border patrol, and they was able to run across through the forest and run into Germany. And they went. Where did you catch the boat, Mother? Hamburg or Brennan?
Bremen.
Brennan. And there was a lot of other Molokan families in Brennan waiting to be clear their physical in order to travel to the United States.
What I don't understand is what was the problem at the border? They didn't want anybody leaving Russia at that time,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
what? Why not? The communists weren't in then.
No,
right?
this was the Tsar's
No,
time.
What were they worried
they
about?
figured, people have boys, they take them to the,
service.
draft them to be soldiers. And so when they go away, there's not enough soldiers, I guess.
'Cause-
Something like that,
And what year did you come? 1906 or 1905?
1907.
1907. They left.
They end in October.
They left. They caught the.
October 1907.
They when they got to Brennan, and they heard that there was a boat leaving in 2 days?
Next day.
Next day, and so they
Yeah,
passed their
Winchester
physical.
was there overnight.
And there was another family, Molokan family, they called the Barakovs, who were there, and one of their.
He knows more than I do.
Well,
Yeah.
I've heard this story so many times, and
sorry,
I'm just trying to help her. And when this Barakov they had a daughter who couldn't pass a physical, and they were held back. So finally, they was able to clear, and they all traveled, and they
She
left.
was blind, and they hold them back. They was going to send it back, and they started to. This says unless you have so many affidavits, for her. So there was some people already ahead of them, and they sent a letter over. Before there was no telephones. You have to send a letter, and you have to wait for the answer. So they stayed there 2 months. By the time they got their affidavit for their
Clearance.
because she can't speak She was deaf and dumb.
Deaf and dumb, yeah.
Yeah.
This one, this Berkoff, a girl.
Yeah, so coming in,
And then you went by boat. How many days did you travel on the boat, Mother?
22 days,
22 days, and where did you land?
Yellowstone, Texas. And then when we got off there, and we got our baggage with us, beddings, you know, and
some of our,
Padoshki and Pirini, and so, and we, if someone took picture, probably they did. We was piled it up on the floor, and we all sat, because someone told us, they says, you watch your things, because you get robbed. And so we were all sitting around our beddings, you know, sitting, you know, watching our things. And so,
and
then well, we do take a little walk outside. So we walked to the fence was pretty high. You can't run out of it. So when we walked by the fences looking at the street, and there was a colored black woman dressed all in white. And she stopped and she was looking at us because we looked queer to her. And to us, she was, because we never saw black people in Russia. We saw a lot of Chinese, we saw some Japanese and all other nationalities, but not black ones. Yeah, so we were just watching at her. She was dressed beautiful, and she looked black. And one man came up, and he was Jew. And he talked Russian, and he says, "Babushka, чего смотрите?" She says, like, "Grandma, you know, what you're looking?" And she says, "We never saw black people before." And she asked him, what did she say? And he told her the same thing. And she was embarrassed. And she turned around and she walked real fast away from us. Yeah. So I guess
how long did you stay in Galveston then?
not that same day. I don't know, a few hours. I don't know how many hours, but
And you
then
had,
we took a train. In train, there was such already packed.
with immigrants.
And you know, we sat whatever, and 3 days and 3 nights.
Traveled
And
from,
there was not enough seats to sit, so we had that bedding with us. We put it between where they walk,
yeah,
between there. And at night time, you know, when the conductor passes by, and he kicks us. Because he had to pass by, and there's not enough room to pass by. He have to kick us, so we have to move a little bit so he could pass by.
Well, mother, let me ask you a question. Now, when you left Russia, and you knew you had to go where? You knew you had relatives in Los Angeles. Is that right?
Yeah, well, we already had my aunt, my father's sister, Stupina.
Yeah.
They got here a few months before we did. Same year. It was same year,
Mhm.
but you know,
So,
way ahead of us.
so
you know.
when you took 3 days and 3 nights, and then you traveled to Los Angeles, and then when you got to Los Angeles, that was the old.
No, my oldest sister husband was here before. He got here before, and he was trying to meet us at the station.
In Los Angeles.
And I don't know, it was 3 days or so, and we didn't come. So one day he didn't come, and we came. And there's another man came to meet his relatives. So he says, I know where your relative lives. He says, you come along with us. We didn't know where to go. So we came.
They walked over the bridge.
Stooping. Yeah, we walked across the bridge.
About over a mile or two.
No, not two. Less.
1 mile.
And when we got, when we were walking to the Stupin's house, and there was some Russian kids already, by the school, Utah Street School, and some Russian kids already were in school. And when they saw us coming, and one of the boys was hollering, Russia, Russia. And my sisters were dying laughing. They were laughing. They says, wait, somebody else will come after us. We're going to holler too for them, Russia, Russia. So that was kind of funny, you know, I could remember that.
So when you cross the bridge and you run in all these Molokon.
No, we didn't. We just one old man.
And then he told you where your
yeah.
uncle Petro,
Yeah, just one old man.
Or
and
Nikolai, what's his name? What was Stupin's name?
I don't know.
Stupin's name.
Stupin?
Petro
Petro Nikolaevich.
Yeah, Peter Stupin.
Matrona Vasilievna. Yeah,
So
Tetka nasha.
So when they came over their house, they greeted each other, and they stayed. How long did you stay with your uncle Petro before he found you a place to stay?
I don't think we stayed because he already rented the place for us.
Oh, I see.
And the place was like this, you know, front there and kitchen.
Front room, kitchen, and the
No,
bathroom.
not separated, straight. Front and dining and kitchen. And so those two rooms, and
And there was let's see, there was how many? There was you and Uncle Jack and
but we all slept on the floor.
Yeah.
We didn't mind it. Mm-hmm.
But then when they traveled as a family. My grandfather, my grandmother, my mother, her sister Hazel, her sister Anna, and her brother Jack. And there they came as a family, plus with these other people. So anyway, so when you come and then you lived in this small house and you lived and where did you go to work at? You went to school? You went to school right away?
Oh yeah, I went to school right away.
And how many years did you go to school?
I went to school 3 years, I
3
think.
years? Yeah. Anyway, what I want to even backtrack a little bit. When they lived in Russia, mother's sister Hazel, who's now married to, well, she's passed away, but she was married to Daddy Von Popov, John Popov. Anyway, she was a tall woman, husky woman, and her aunt, see, her father was my grandfather. My grandfather had 3 children, and then my grandmother had 3 children. So she was on the father's side. So anyway, her aunt on her father's side used to, because she was so tall and strong that they took her during the summer, and wintertime she'd come back home and live the winter because they had no use for her in wintertime. So go back and forth. So anyway, when they after they came, they lived here in the United States a short time, and in those days it was fixed marriages where parents on both sides agreed and they matched their children, and because Aunt Anna was the older than Aunt Hazel, anyway, some family wanted Aunt Hazel as a bride for their son. And my grandfather says, no way. We married the oldest first. And then, so they had to back off and then they waited till Aunt Anna got her husband, and then she married, And what else can we say? Is that right, Bob?
Well, I don't know what else.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
some little
Yes.
thing I wanted to.
That's how
Put
we
in,
just
yeah.
went to America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And see this one area where they lived in, where grandmother was born, mother was born, Salem and Kars. It used to be Russia. It's an area that's not. It belongs to Turkey. If you see on the map, you can see the town of Kars, and it's just right at the border there between Russia and Turkey. And they lived in there, and then plus then, like mother said, they moved from Salem to Kars, and where all the Molokans kind of stayed together with one another there. So when mother, when you after you finished school after the third grade, then you went to work as a babysitter, taking care of children.
Yeah, Jewish.
For the Jewish
place,
family.
3 children.
And they had 3 children, so she stayed there all weekend, and on weekends, did you come home on weekends? Saturdays and Sundays?
No, not for a while.
Yeah.
Not for a while. My mother used to come over and visit me once.
And then when you was about 14, you went to work where?
I was about 13 and a half, I think.
When you went to work for the laundry?
Yeah, when I started working in the laundry and
So grandmother worked in a laundry when she was working, when she became 13 and a half years old, she went to work in the laundry. They worked 6 days a week, what, 10 hours a day? Or 9 hours?
10 hours.
They worked 10 hours a day, 6 days a week.
Yeah,
So
6 days. And well, that wasn't lasted very long. Then they changed the law to 9 hours.
Yeah.
And
So and as you was growing up, did you tell me that there was so many young men wanted to marry mother? I mean, the parents wanted mother for a bride for their sons, and mother, she says no. She totally begged her father, says no. I want to marry the man that I love.
So did you broke tradition, Babunia, when you got married? I mean, was your father upset with you because you said no fixed marriage? I'm going to marry who I want. Did your father get mad about that? No, he didn't care.
no,
Oh,
he says she's young yet.
oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, he understood, and she says she's young yet. But those people, they're from Salem, and they lived in San Francisco. And they're nice boys. Oh yeah, they're nice boys and all that. But they says, no, he says, she's too young. And then after a while, again, one boy, the second time he came after me, and then I forgot what it was. I was going to say something.
Well, did you get married very young? Even
No.
Yeah, I didn't get married young, no,
No,
because
what-
all my boyfriends, the one that wanted me, and I liked them, but I was just didn't want to get married young.
uh-huh.
They all got married. They found them
Oh.
girls, and they got married. And then when I was 18 or 19, I was already old maid.
Oh, does that mean? Well,
Yeah,
your
I
friends were getting married. When you said, how old were your girlfriends when they were getting married? Were they 16?
15 and 16
15.
years old.
Usually 16 and 17.
Oh,
16
Yeah.
and 17 the most. All my cousins and my girlfriends, they got married when they were 16.
hmm.
Yeah.
So now you waited till you was, how old did you met my father, John Zolnekoff? How old was you when you met father?
20.
He was 20, and you married at 21,
And he was 21.
and he was
They have, I guess,
Yeah.
something like that. Almost 22 he was.
married in what, the Salimsky church?
Yeah,
Salimsky church. Salimsky, the reason I say Salimsky churches is because all the people, all the members of this Salimsky church came from Salim or Kars. So then most of them were probably related. So, and then they were married, I think 1 year, and then I was born in 1919. And then Brother Bill was born 15 months later in 1920. And then,
Well, the end of the year.
yeah, and then Nora was born in what, 1920, what, 26?
You're right,
Yeah.
25.
1925, and Tanya was born in 1932.
32. Janet was
So, you know, so there's four of us in our family.
yeah.
So,
And what Mr. or I would say grandfather Zolnekoff,
Uh-huh.
then he died at
1950.
1950.
He was-
He was rather young, wasn't
50, he was 53-year-old.
Well, he had
53
a high
years.
blood pressure
Oh,
and he had a stroke.
oh.
So high
Yeah.
blood pressure doesn't fool around.
So going back,
Hit them in the head and get stroke.
so what year did father come? 12?
He came 1912.
No, my father, John Zolnekoff, came in the United States in 1912. When he traveled, he landed in Canada, and then he went to Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, and then Los Angeles. Meantime, his father was already here, because my grandfather Zolnekoff was here several times, looking for land and whatnot, twice. And so when my father came, he met his father, and they went to Arizona, and they bought some property down there next to Scottsboro.
Scottsdale?
Scottsdale, excuse me, Scottsdale, yeah. And so, but when grandfather went back to bring the rest of his family, the doors closed. The war and World War I was on, and they couldn't get out of the country. So they lived there a while, and then when the war ended and the communists took over Russia, they ran across the border, Iranian border, into Iran, and that's where my grandfather Zolnekoff died with my grandmother. Yeah. So, mother worked. You worked in the laundry, and then you worked in Walnuts, was it?
Yeah.
Walnuts, with this walnut Diamond Walnut Company, where they sorted out and picked out all the walnut meats, and it was all piecework, so they had to work pretty hard. And then she also worked in a burlap bag place where she had to sort bags, you know, to be sold or thrown out or whatnot, you know. So grandmother worked pretty hard in her lifetime, you know.
So when did you? I know you're working, raising the kids and all, but was there one time you retired, or how did that work? Did you just store up enough money so that you could get by over the years, or reason I'm asking this, I remember Otis Street when I was a child, and I don't know how did you get to Otis Street? There's something.
Here it go.
What?
I didn't hear
Well,
it.
what he's saying is, how did you support yourself? I mean, when father died, was you still working? At age 53, he was a young woman.
Yeah, well, you know, I was working, yeah, I was still working, but Jeanette, already 18, she started to work.
Oh,
So
okay.
And Uncle
everybody was,
Bill, Bill was home, so he
all
worked.
was doing well,
Yeah.
and we just finished paying for the house.
Oh.
And the
That
house,
time, up there on Otto Street,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
well, let's go back a little bit. When we lived in Flats, Bill and myself were born in Los Angeles, and Nora was born in Los Angeles. And then my father, who said we're going to move out on the farm, And where the farm was, it was called Palmar, but now it's Lynwood. There was about 15 Moluccan families living there. And in those days, there was maybe 2 or 3 houses on a street. And when my father had this house built, a 2-bedroom house, it cost, was it $2,500 to have this house built. So you could see that even though $2,500 was a lot of money in those days, because if they worked for $1 a day, that was pretty good money. So we moved there. We moved to Lynwood in 1926. 26. We lived out there, and mother and father. We didn't have a car in those days, so they had to travel the red streetcar, which they had to walk about a half a mile to the streetcar line, and they'd ride this streetcar into Los Angeles, transfer to a yellow car, what they call the yellow car, to their work destination, and vice versa. Their day was quite long. By the time they got up real early in the morning to catch the streetcar, get to work, and by the time when they quit and come home, it was dark.
You want to take a break here?
Yeah, let's
take a break.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Talking about Lynwood. When we lived in Lynwood, there we lived on a corner on 2649 111th Street in Lorraine. And when we lived there, we had, in those days they didn't have sewers, so everybody had cesspools, and so it was quite a problem during the winter time when the water table would go up and the cesspools would fill up. So, but we had to be careful. My father built a cellar, and we used to store all our food that needs. For the children, your grandchildren.
Cellar.
No. Anyway, we had a cellar, and in those days we didn't have a refrigerator like we have nowadays. We had an ice box, and we had to get ice every other day. And so anyway, mother used to bake bread once a week in this Russian, that we call Russian stove. It's a Dutch oven. It was built in my father built it in the backyard, and we would burn wood in this here stove for a couple hours, and then when the coals got down, we raked out the hot coals, and mother would have the bread be ready. It was already risen, and she would put them in this stove, and they would bake bread, and the bread would be pretty good sized bread, and that would be bread for a week, because after they were baked, they'd be wrapped in cloth to keep them from drying out. And so when we had sandwiches, they weren't, because you couldn't cut a thin slice, you had to cut a thick slice. So the slices of bread were like that. When we went to school, we had bread, more bread than a sandwich. So, but it was good. And then we had one period in our lives when I was a small boy, young boy. We had my mother's mother living with us, because she was already a widow. My grandfather died in 1922. When did your father die? 1922?
Father?
Yeah.
Father?
Yeah.
1950.
No, your father.
22.
1922. So my grandmother was a widow, so she lived either with us or with Uncle Jack or Aunt Anna. So most of the time she lived with us, and she was a wonderful person. So we had that was one of the reasons that mother was working most of the time, because she took care of us.
Was my dad a handful to take care of, Babunia?
Yeah, I sure was.
No, I'm not asking you. Did he get in a lot of trouble when he was a boy?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. he got lost one day, half a day. We looking for him. He was lost. We didn't know where he was. And he was playing on a lot over there with a small little car, making tracks, and working there. And we went to the bridge and under the bridge, and we was looking all over because he used to, like to go places.
I never knew.
Uh-huh. And
What
then
time
I
it was?
says, are you hungry? Yes. Why didn't you come home to eat? I don't know. And then again I says, why didn't you come home? Because I don't know. He was playing so beautifully that he didn't come home. So he was gone from 10 o'clock in the morning and found him 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
No, my grandmother used to say, he says, Paul, he said, one of these days you're going to come home without your head, because I was always, never thought about time. I just was interested in what I was doing, playing and whatnot, so time would just get away from me. Anyway, my father kind of put a stop to that. But when we lived in Los Angeles, he told me I had to be home at 5 o'clock. If I didn't be home at 5 o'clock, I had to stand in the corner on my knees, which was punishment, in a corner, and I was not allowed to look back. I was just supposed to look in that corner while the rest of the family ate, and then I went to bed. And that was punishment. That was, so anyway, going back to my father, after he married my mother, him and my grandfather, they went to market there on First Street in East Los Angeles. We're in Russian Town, which we call Russian Town. They're in flats, and they had
have water.
They had a grocery store for a short time, and in those days there was no such thing as refrigeration. The ice was the only refrigeration, and my father was he would have meat cut out, and if it had a little odor to it, he threw it away. He was always throwing his profits away. Where the other storekeepers, they used to rinse their meat in water and bring it out, and it would smell okay. So they were in the grocery business a short time, and then they sold it to my Uncle Jack, my mother's brother, and he had the store for a few years too. And
so how did you get to Otis Street?
Let's go back. When the war came on, just before the war, just before the United States entered the war was over there in Europe, and so we decided to move from Lynwood, and we bought a place on Otis there in Bell, and that was 1941, and that was just early in the spring. It was this big yard. My dad, he just loved the big yard because we had chickens. He had a good garden back there. He liked to putter. We had a lot of fruit trees, and that's what we had back there. And then when the war came on and the draft came on, Uncle Bill went in the Navy. He went first. He went in the Navy in 1942, and then in January, I went into the Air Force.
Why did you pick the Air Force? Was
Well,
there
I
some
didn't have
reason?
any choice. When I was drafted, they were taking everybody into the Air Force at that time. That was such a big moment for the Air Force, and so we went in the service. We spent over 3.5 years in the service, and anyway, so my dad worked in the shipyards. He worked in the different places. He worked in a lumber yard. He worked for Pat and Blinn for a number of years. And then when he got sick. He was already 50 years old. He was having problems with his blood pressure. When he raised his hand like that, it would cut off his oxygen in his system. So he couldn't work anymore. And then in 1950, he had a stroke. He was in a coma for a week, and then he passed away. And then grandmother was here, a widow by herself, and she didn't know what to do. So finally, somebody said, let's build some apartments on this property. So she was able to float a loan, and she built these 4 apartments, and she lived off of that for a number of years, and then Mr. Konovalov, he entered the picture. And tell us, how did you meet Yakov Danielich Konovalov?
I don't know. He just saw me in a church, and he was watching. He says, I've been watching widows, and he knew I was widow. I guess he asked somebody, who I was and all that. And then he says, while he was looking, it was kind of cute. He says, I was looking, that widow is good, and that widow is pretty, and that widow also something. When he looked at me, he says, it hits me in my heart, Tuk. It goes, Tuk. He says, then he says, no, I don't know her, I don't know what, if she's too young for me, she might not marry me, I think then he'll start it over again. Well, he'll go over again up, when he gets up to me, he says, it hits me in my heart always. He says, Tuk.
Love at first sight, huh? Love at first sight.
That's why he says, that's the way he said, So he says, well, I'm going to take a chance, and I'm going to ask her.
So mother was.
And I thought to myself, I'm not going to get married anymore because I'm not very young. I'm 56, I think I was.
57?
57.
And he was 67.
And then, I says, well, he says he like to come over. I thought to myself, why not? Let him come over. So I could brag about it that, I had somebody came over to visit me. And when he came once, and boy, he wanted to come back again. I says, all right. I says, but I'm going to wash. I'm going to be busy. He says, that's all right. He says, that's all right. You do your work, but I'll come over. I says, all right then. And I cooked dinner, and at the same time I was ironing clothes, and he was watching how I was working, clothes, for them. And same time I'm watching the dinner, ironing board, and the stove right next, And he liked that. I could do 2 things at one time. And so from that time he won't come back again. And that's how it went.
And then they decided to get married. He's from Arizona, from Glendale, Arizona.
I told him, I says, I'm not going to go to Arizona. He says, I'm not going to live here. I'm going to, live here. And he says, we'll buy a house together, you and me, and we'll live here. And then, but the things after we got married, things changed. So I'm not going to go further.
Well, he was, how many years did you live together?
14.
They lived 14 years together.
14 we lived in there.
Yeah, lived 14.
So, the life like that, you don't know what's going to be next.
Yeah, right. And he was a speaker in church, very prominent, church member.
Yeah, he was popular.
One thing we'll say about him is that he used to study scripture, because when he had to speak in church, he had to know at least 2 or 3 sermons for the occasion. And when his Bible went to pieces, he borrowed my Bible, and my Bible, Russian Bible, went to pieces too. So I got it somewhere. It's all tattered. And he was quite a guy. He was a tall man, and he was a farmer.
Well, I remember going to Arizona and chasing the sheep there when I was very little.
Remember that time we came over to visit you there, and you had Alan went out there on the field
was
and
chasing after the
sheep.
there, you know.
Yeah, so he.
Well,
And now, as we're talking,
he loved his farm.
as we're talking now, this is January the 21st, 21st, and grandmother is 92 years old. She was 92 in November of 1989, so she's going on 93 years old, and she's a pretty good old gal. She's my mother.
You don't say.
Why not? Aren't you a pretty good gal?
Not old.
No,
I'm
young.
not old.
That's right. You're 92 years young.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
and mother's been a widow now. How long have he's been gone now?
20 years, I guess. I don't know.
With him, he's been gone 23 years. So mother's been a widow for 23 years, and living in this house. She sold the house on notice, and she bought this house, and she's living it now. Uncle,
27 years we're living here.
27 years. So grandma's lived in this house for 27 years.
Why did you didn't want the apartments anymore to take care of there? Is that why you moved here? To get a smaller place? Or
Why did you sell your Otis and move over here? Because it was very noisy over that corner where she was living at. It was very noisy. There was a lot of other problems on the boulevard there in Florence there. So when she wanted to move over here, and there was 2 houses on a lot, and she was able to buy it and pay for it. And anyway, Uncle Bill, he moved in the front house, and he lived there a number of years. Then his wife passed away, and so here in 1989, in last of June, his house caught a fire by a cigarette, and it burned it down. Now him and mother living together in their own house.
Are you waiting for Janice? Janice
No,
coming?
no.
Oh, well, you're always looking outside,
So,
and I
I'm trying
thought you were
I wish-
expecting something.
No, I'm wishing the people honking their horns out there would quit honking.
Oh,
There's
So-
fire trucks going by.
So, but mother now in the last few years, she homebound. I mean, she's on her feet. She does her own cooking for Bill and herself, and she's very alert. And she does walk, and she walks up and down the driveway and up the street now a little bit. And her heart is good and her blood pressure is just like a young person. So who knows how long, she might live to be 100 and then some.
yeah. Well, don't talk about how long.
Well, it's God's will,
I never had a high blood pressure in my life. Never did, A little bit under, and doctor says that's not too bad. And that's why, I never had too much trouble with it.
So, so
well, God knows.
Yeah.
That's all.
another thing about mother here, after my father died, John Zolnekoff, her lady friends encouraged her to join and become president of the ladies organization of the UMCA, and she was there involved as a president, and she worked over there for a number of years.
Yeah. So you want
I guess
to call that a day?
I guess we can call this. Should we call this a day?
Okay.
All right.
Do you think of anything else?
I don't. Right now, offhand, I can't say. Just maybe there's other things that enter our picture. Oh, well, this is for mother, so I won't bring in my end of it. Where you come in the picture, Alan, and
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll just stop it there.
yeah.